Welcome to the Buddhistisches Tor Berlin podcast. Join us for live recordings from classes, insightful talks, and guided meditations.
So great to see so many of you here. My name is Sanghadarsini. Who is here for the very first time? Just raise your hands. Quite a few people. The room over there was really packed, and I just had a really lovely little group of 5 or 6 of us in that room. So we're just having an overflow at the moment because so many people are coming. So I'm going to talk about friendship today, spiritual friendship as a path of insight. And whoever of you has been coming here for a while, quite often the theme of friendship comes into our talks. And there is this really famous meeting of the Buddha with his friend and companion, somebody who was looking after him, called Ananda. And one day, they were a bit older at that stage, Ananda had been thinking. And he sort of like really reflected on things. So he went to the Buddha and he said, Lord, or Buddha, I've been thinking about something. I think that spiritual friendship is really the half of the spiritual life. What a thing to say, isn't it? It's not meditation, it's not sort of like studying. He was thinking it's half of the spiritual life. And then the Buddha turns to him and he says, say not so, Ananda. Say not so. Spiritual friendship is the whole of the spiritual life. Wow, what a thing to say, isn't it? So I have to say that the theme of friendship has been very important for me, actually through my whole life and especially through my spiritual life. I believe that without my friends, I would not get very far on the path, especially those who are a bit more developed than myself, who are more mature. They're really an integral part of my life. I have been inspired by the ideals of friendship, and often I'm falling short of them. I just had some painful experience on a retreat I've just been leading where, sometimes it's just like we are human beings where we meet up with each other, and sometimes we really aspire each other, and sometimes we just become aware of our conditioning, and that's actually really lovely if that can come out, and then we support each other in this way. But the great thing is about that in some ways it's a practice. Friendship is also a practice. We can sort of like step one step back and explore what has happened. What can I learn from it? And we can try again. If we really have friends who sort of like have the same sense of wanting to develop, it's wonderful, like we can grow. And all of you had that experience. So I think this is one of my main points for this talk. I could stop now, that spiritual friendship is actually a practice. Yeah, I would say a little bit more about it later. We fail, we can learn, we can try again. And I always thought that it's a shame that friendship is not a subject at school, If we're lucky, maybe our parents lived meaningful friendships and they were part of our lives growing up. But my parents, I was growing up in a hotel in southern Germany, and their first thing was work. I mean, we had a lovely atmosphere, but their first thing was work, and then the second thing was family. And there were hardly any friendships sort of like outside of that who played a part in it. So I didn't really have much role models, but I can say that I had good friends all the way. In the worldly friends, but also friends in the Sangha who taught me a lot. And I remember as a young woman, I was reading a biography of our then president, Richard Weizsäcker. Maybe some of you will know, but he said at some stage, the best thing about myself are my friends. And I always thought, yes, that's true. So there is a lot one can say about spiritual friendships. And in Triratna, in this Buddhist movement, there has been a lot said about spiritual friendship. And I decided to base my talk on a sutta, which is sort of like a thread from the early Buddhist scriptures. Sometimes you have more teachings, but quite often you also have stories, and they sort of like have a meaning. And this is the story of, or the sutta of Meghiya. And it's, for the people who know the Pali Canon, the early text, it's in the Udana, in the Khuddaka Nikaya, the shorter discourses from the Sutta Nipata, so if you want to read it up. And some of you might have heard about it before. I think a few months ago, can't remember, somebody gave a talk on the Meghiya Sutta as well. So Meghiya is a young man, he is the Buddha's attendant. He has gone forth, he is a bhikkhu, he is a monk. He joined the community of the Buddha at the time. So the Buddha always had somebody, an attendant, somebody who would accompany him everywhere, who might fetch water for him, who would mend his robes, who would be there when the Buddha was teaching. And in some ways he was also the contact between the people who wanted to see the Buddha, and he sort of like made sure that they were sort of like seen at the right time. So maybe today we could say that he was the Buddha's personal assistant or personal secretary. So he was around the Buddha quite a lot. And I just wonder, just imagine, what do you think would it be like to be so close in contact with the Buddha or somebody really developed if you would be around them? Just imagine, how would that be like? So one morning, Meghiya asked the Buddha for permission if he could go on an alms round. So in the morning, the monks would go into the villages with their bowl and they would collect food. And on his way back, he passed this very delightful, peaceful mango grove at the bank of the Kimikala River. So the peaceful mango grove at the bank of a river. So he thinks to himself, this would be the ideal place for meditating on his own, for striving towards enlightenment. So he goes to the Buddha and asks him if he could go there. And the Buddha is on his own. So this is quite interesting. I think normally monks would always go in twos wherever they are. I mean, we're here talking about the jungle in India, wild animals, robbers, I don't know, all sorts of things could happen. You could twist your ankle. So normally people would stay in twos. But Meghiya really wants to go to the mango grove. So he asks the Buddha for permission to go. And the Buddha says, wait, Meghiya, until some other monks will arrive. But Meghiya is impatient, He has set his mind on the mango grove, striving for enlightenment, and he asks the Buddha again, who answers in the same way. He's asking Meghiya, please wait. Then Meghiya asks a third time, and if you ask the Buddha a third time, you get a different answer. This time, Meghiya was quite clever. He argued the Buddha had already gained enlightenment, but Meghiya, hasn't had a chance for it yet. How could the Buddha be in his way when he now has the opportunity to strive for enlightenment? So the Buddha responds, when you're talking about striving, Meghiya, what can I say? Now is the time for whatever you are thinking, Meghiya. So he just sends Meghiya off to go to the mango grove. So Meghiya goes off to the mango grove. He finds this beautiful spot with this beautiful scent of mangoes around. He sits down to meditate, and what happens? He is caught in the hindrances, in anger, sexual fantasies, and hatred. So he has the perfect external condition. He really wants to strive, full of idealism. He has a meditation technique, but then he meets himself. We all know how that feels, doesn't it? We meet ourselves, his emotions, his sexual fantasies, his ill will, hatred, and he's not prepared for being with them, and he does not know how to handle these strong emotions. So in the evening, he goes back to the Buddha and tells him what has happened. He does not pretend that he had a good time, but he honestly says what has happened. But he's still puzzled, With all these amazing conditions, how could this have happened? And the Buddha is great. He does not say, I told you so, it's probably what I would do. He doesn't say, I knew that this would happen. There is not a trace of annoyance in him, but he gives him a teaching. So he says, when the heart's release is immature Meghiya, there are 5 things which bring about maturity. So he's going to give him a teaching. So the Buddha wants one thing more than anything. He wants Meghiya to grow. Meghiya does not fully understand how the path works. He thinks what he needs to do is a technique like meditation. If I meditate, then. He does not understand conditionality. He is not enlightened, so he is very conditioned by the conditions around him. Maybe he's feeling energized, positive and inspired, and maybe that's because of certain conditions around him. Maybe you feel this here. Every time I come here, I could be a bit grumpy, and I come here and meditate with all of you, and then woo, a lovely energy arises. So we are conditioned. And probably the being around the Buddha must have had an uplifting effect on him. But maybe he doesn't see it. Maybe he takes the Buddha a little bit for granted. So it's about putting ourselves into the right conditions. The more you realize that actually spiritual growth is conditional, that will make you put yourself into the right conditions. And mostly that is other people. It's a sangha, it's a community of people who are maybe a bit wiser than you, maybe a bit more on the path than you. And the best way to think about it is that the path is actually relational. It's about our relationships we have. And this is then also the first thing which the Buddha says. He talks about spiritual friendship, about kalyana mitrata. So the primary thing he talks about in this sutta, there's other suttas where he talks about other things, but in this sutta he talks about friendship. Not so much friendship in the ordinary way, where we hang out with our friends or just have fun, or they make us feel good about ourselves. All this can be part of spiritual friendship. But this is about where you really start to care about the growth and development of another person. Yeah, where you love the good in the other person. When the friendship is not based so much on an exchange, I do this for you and then you do this for me, but it's more about just really giving. Where you can be more and more yourself in that friendship. And through the friendship, if you allow the other person a bit closer, like I said on the retreat, getting closer to some people, you just really gain some self-knowledge about yourself. So this is friendship in the sense of kalyana mitrata. That's the word we use in Buddhism. And kalyana means the beautiful, the good, the true, the auspicious, the morally good. And mitrata is friendship or companionship. So this is the beautiful friendship. It's the morally good companionship. And Subhuti, one of our teachers in the order, he wrote an essay about spiritual friendship, and there he says, in friendship, especially in its noblest, 2 human beings are considering each other. It's an absolute miracle that 2 human beings in friendship, in coming to like each other, in coming to know each other, are rising above the narrow self-interest. They're putting themselves in the other person's place. They're going out to the other person's viewpoint. This is absolutely extraordinary. From a narrowly materialistic point of view, it is quite an explicable phenomenon. It is quite an extraordinary phenomenon. It is a remarkable human achievement, perhaps the greatest human achievement, the simplest but the greatest human achievement, that one human being is able to put themselves in the place of another human being. And this is what friendship really basically consists in, this mutual putting oneself in the place of another. Perhaps it's the greatest achievement we can aspire. So this is what friendship is. Big words. So this is what the first thing what the Buddha talks about, spiritual friendship, kalyana mitrata, putting ourselves into the shoes of another being. And this is then, he talks about 5 things. This is, he lists 4 other things. And he says that the quality of friendship is foundational, and the other arise on the basis of this spiritual friendship. He really is placing immense importance on practicing in the context of spiritual friendship. So I will tell you about these 4 things in a moment. But first I want to draw out a few things from the story, which hopefully will light up a little bit more the qualities of the friendship between Meghiya and the Buddha. So the Meghiya and the Buddha, they have a relationship which is not based on power. That's really important. I mean, the Buddha is far more developed than Meghiya, but there is trust, isn't it? There's a relaxed atmosphere between them. Meghiya is not scared to challenge the Buddha. You know, he not just asks once, but then he asks a second time, and he asks a third time. And the Buddha then gives him the freedom to do what he needs to do. So this is quite important, isn't it? It's an important ingredient of spiritual friendship that there is ease and trust, and that will take time to develop. It's about giving the other person freedom. There is no power mode. So the Buddha is a friend to Meghiya. He is giving him personal freedom. The Buddha saw that Meghiya is not a bad guy. Maybe he's a bit naive. It's actually quite beautiful, his idealism, his energy, his passion. And the Buddha does not destroy this energy. He must be fully aware that what's going to happen, that Meghiya is going to meet himself, and that in some ways, he's not ready for it yet. But he gives him the freedom to find out for himself. He allows him to get a bit wiser through this experience. And then Meghiya comes back to the Buddha. I mean, that takes courage, doesn't it? Sort of like he left him alone. He probably knows that he did something a little bit he shouldn't do. And then he comes back to the Buddha, probably a bit embarrassed. But he comes back, he trusts the Buddha. He comes straight back to him and tells him what has happened. And I love Meghiya for that. And his trust was well placed because the Buddha does not criticize him. The Buddha gives him the next stage of the path for what to do when the heart's release is still immature. So Meghiya uses this language of striving, of fighting for enlightenment. But then the Buddha talks about the heart's release, which is another word for enlightenment, which is really quite beautiful, isn't it? It's a release, the sense of maybe getting away from captivity, or getting away from paying back a debt, or maybe light has come into a dark room, or maybe being released from prison. So it's this sense of something opening up. Enlightenment, it's very hard to describe what enlightenment is, but sometimes there are these images which just give a little bit of a taste of what it's about. So this lovely feeling of freedom, almost like a bird escaping into freedom. The heart's release is a bit like letting go a bird from your hands into the air. You know, it's sort of like just flying off. So when the heart's release is immature, Meghiya, there are 5 things which will bring about maturity. What he means, until you are enlightened or you have made significant development into that direction, your heart is not open. You are still imprisoned, in Buddhism we would say, by greed, hatred, and delusion. But there are helpful conditions which will help you to grow, to ripen. We need conditions for the ripening of the heart to happen. Or as we say as Buddhists, for our going for refuge to deepen. So it's such a different image which Meghiya is using. He wants to strive, wants to fight for enlightenment, and the Buddha gives him an organic image, an image of growth, which needs time, patience, and different conditions, like planting a garden. So what are the 5 things? The first thing which brings about maturity and leads to the heart's release is spiritual friends. We need spiritual friends on the path. Other people who are a bit wiser, a bit more developed than ourselves, who can see the next step on the path, who encourage us, who help us get a bigger perspective, who can be role models for us, maybe through their humor, their friendliness, their patience, their generosity. Friends who help us keep going when the going gets tough, who help us go beyond our limiting self-interest, just through their examples. Our teacher, Sanghadarsini, said at one stage, the Dharma, the Buddha's teaching, cannot be taught, it must be caught. We learn from people who really embody something. So I just go a little bit personal. The first order member I ever met was, I was coming to the Auckland Buddhist Centre. That was my first step in New Zealand, where I met a Dharmacharani called Navachita. Yeah? And I just was really intrigued by her, the way she was. She had a fantastic sense of humor. And I just sort of like came up to her, asked her all these questions, and she was very happy to answer them. And I was coming just for the third time, and then she said, there is a retreat coming up with this meditation teacher coming over from the UK, a guy called Kamalashila, who's actually one of our greatest meditation teachers in our movement. And I was just there 3 times. It was a 10 days meditation retreat, and she said, why don't you go? I had no idea what a retreat was, you know. I had no idea what to expect, but I thought, if she thinks I should go, I go. And I think it was a life-changing experience, that retreat. She also told me one day that there was a woman called Cass who was around, and that I really, really had to meet her, yeah. There was something she could see, that the two of us would sort of like, there would something be happening between the two of us. So the next time I came to the Buddhist Center, we did this exercise, communication exercise, where you sit opposite of somebody and you do these weird sentences. But out of that became a really fierce friendship between the two of us, which was very challenging, very rewarding, and very important for the two of us. And Navachita also gave me a very strong teaching, which was some years later. She was living in the UK, and I was traveling with a friend, and I was going to meet her in a cafe. I hadn't seen her probably for 2-3 years. And with this friend I was traveling, we got into a real mess with each other. It was so bad that at some stage we couldn't talk to each other anymore. It was just like, oh, it was just hell. So I came into this cafe without my friend, and I just went like this to Navachita and just told her about my friend and all the things she had done wrong. I was really furious. And Navachita just looked at me and she says, be kind, Sabine, just be kind. And at that moment I felt so ashamed about my behavior. It was a bit like a lightning had struck me. But Navachita had said the words with such kindness and warmth. Indirectly she was saying, my name then was Sabine, I know you can do much better than this. What a teaching. Her words were easy to take because I loved and trusted her, and I knew she wanted me to grow. What a gift, even if it first was a bit of a painful gift. So when precepts are delivered with love, they are more effective. For me, the words just be kind meant I was meeting the patience of Navachita, the wisdom of Navachita, and the love of Navachita. And at other times I also met her humor. She once told me then when people projected too much onto her and she was on a walk with them, she just farted. Second is that virtuous conduct can be expected if you practice with spiritual friends. So ethical sense can be expected when you practice with your spiritual friends. So we're picking up on ethics through others in the Sangha, or even outside of it, with the spiritual community. We see how others are dealing with ethical issues in their daily life. And ethical sensitivity develops in us through their example. The shame which I immediately felt when Navachita told me, just be kind. But that experience was transforming. I knew that she was not judging me. I knew that I could do better, and also knew in that moment that I could really do much better. If you live in a community of thieves like Oliver Twist, you learn skills which don't lead to enlightenment. But if you live with others in the spiritual community, you will learn skills that will lead probably towards enlightenment. You catch the Dharma, you catch ethics. When you see your brothers and sisters in the Dharma really trying to be ethical, it inspires you to become like them. If someone really confesses, really sees what they have done, and then takes responsibility for their action, that gives you trust to do the same. So this was the second point. The third point the Buddha is giving is that if you have friendship, you can be sure that you have conversations which will encourage. So it starts with having an interest in the other person, an interest in their growth. Really listening, trying to really see the other person, not your projections and desires. Really understand what moves them, what are their difficulties. So instead of being stuck in me, we change our focus of wanting our friends to grow. In Japanese Buddhism, there is the concept of a koan, which is a paradox. So you could even see that true friendship offers us the practice of a koan. We wish to help a friend we love, but we have no answers. So we listen to them, we ask questions, and we ponder their problem deeply over a period of time. And sometimes suddenly we have an insight, yeah? We have found some sort of like maybe next step for our friend. So a friend of mine is very good at that. He really reflects on his friends. And at one time he realized that after pondering on one of his friends for quite some time, that this friend, in order to grow spiritually, he needed to strengthen more mundane qualities. So this guy was a good meditator, and he had really taken to the Dharma, to the Buddha's teaching, but he wasn't really getting anywhere. So this friend of mine made a three-point plan for him, that he had to be employable, yeah? He had to be marriageable. So he had good looks and a good voice. He was intelligent, cultured, but no woman would get near him. And thirdly, capable of management. So this was the three-point plan he told his friend. And the friend agreed to trying to master all three of these. So in time, he became a yoga teacher. He had a girlfriend, and he was running his own yoga venue. And he became much more self-confident. And his spiritual qualities, which were there, really blossomed. So maybe it's sometimes it's quite hard to be objective about ourselves, but maybe it's easier to be objective about a friend. And normally we can put a lot of energy into thinking about the faults of others, yeah? And we quite quickly build a negative image of them. So imagine doing the opposite. Putting a lot of energy into thinking about what our friends or even our enemies might really need. Use your friends or enemies as a koan practice, much better than finding faults in them. So the fourth point is diligence and enthusiasm for the path. So diligence is Sorgfalt in German. Don't know what it's in other languages. Diligence. If we are with someone who's really honest, practicing in all areas of their daily life, who's open about the challenges, who confesses, who works with unskillful mental states, who shares their inspiration, who's mindful, has virya, energy for the good, and wisdom, that will have an effect on us. I mean, it's hard to find somebody who actually can do all of this, yeah, but it's good to have a few people around like this. So it's contagious, it's ansteckend, like a virus, it's contagious. We want to develop these qualities ourselves. So yesterday I came back from a 2 weeks retreat in the Sauerland, where I was in a team with 5 other Dharmacharinis, and we were really different to each other. And sometimes, if you have different people, we are human beings, we rub up against each other. But there was a lot of rejoicing in each other's merits also going on. So some had the qualities which don't come that natural to me, but others had qualities, but I had maybe some qualities which don't come so easy to the others. So I think we learned a lot from working with each other. So instead of going into jealousy or on controlling everything, not giving others the space to shine, we can learn from each other. And having friends practicing at my sides, I don't have to be everything myself, and I can learn from them. So I'm and the other ones with the cases, we are part of an order, yeah. And in some ways it's fantastic. I don't have to embody all the qualities, I can just bring in, I'm one hand of this image, like we say that our order is a bit like the 1,000 arms of this Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion. So I just have my tools in my hand, and somebody else has a different tool, and somebody else has a different tool. But if we're all working together, ideally in harmony, but that has to be worked on, we become a real force of good in the world. I cannot do it on my own. So fifthly, the last thing is insight into impermanence and wisdom. Basically, this is reflecting that all phenomena are based on other phenomena. It's like we could give a whole talk about this, but sort of like everything arises out of everything else. Nothing exists in its own right. Everything depends on the arising of certain conditions. It's a bit silly, but a cup of tea depends on hot water, a tea bag, some half a milk, and your favorite cup of tea. Living in the spiritual community, you become aware how your companions deal with loss, with impermanence. So just before I was talking about on my first retreat was Kamala Shila, this meditation teacher, and he just died last week. He was somebody who really gave all his energies towards helping people, especially with their meditation. And he shared that really generously. It's a really big loss for our movement. But when he realized that he was going to die, he still sort of like tried to do online events for people. And then he had to get into hospital, and at some stage he said to his partner, "Free me. I mean it." What a thing to say, "Free me, I mean it." And all the treatment he then had stopped. Yeah. So impermanence is not a concept, it's the response to how life really is. Our friends show us how to live more in accordance with reality. It will open our own perspective. So this is the 5 things the Buddha has said. So if we have Kalyana Mitras, beautiful, noble, good friends, it can be expected that we are living more ethically. It can be expected that our conversations will be centered around things which will help us grow. It can be expected that we encourage skillful mental states in each other and transform unskillful mental states. And it can be expected that by reflecting our lives from a Buddhist perspective with others, we will hopefully become a bit wiser, that our heart will mature, that wisdom will arise, that the heart will be released. So I just want to make 3 more points about friendship. So become a friend, yeah. Have an interest in people. It's not very big in our culture. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. You say this has saved your lives, yeah. I think it's hugely undervalued, friendship. There is prestige, there is success is important, individualism is important, the romantic ideal is really important, but friendships seems to have fallen a little bit by the wayside. It does not seem to happen very much outside of childhood and adolescence, or maybe be friends from university. So do you value friendship? Can you see the importance of it? And the Buddha is saying, when friendship is there, we will grow. When Kalyana Mitra is there, we will grow. So become a friend, have an interest in people, share your spiritual life with them. Let go of your passivity, become active, value friendship. So our teacher, he has this immortal phrase, to have a friend, you must be a friend. Take the initiative, keep it up. If no one will ask you for a dance, just go and ask them. So your attitude is also of one of wanting your friends to benefit from the Dharma, the Buddhist teaching, or from your wisdom, the things you've learned. Going in a positive direction, growing and developing, becoming more themselves, developing as an individual. And even though you're trying to help them go in a positive direction, you have no idea what that direction will be. You are completely open to how they might choose to live their life. As the Buddha said, my teaching has just one taste. It has the taste of freedom. Nobody has an idea how this individuality will manifest, and you're open to all possibilities. You can share your life stories. You can meet their family. You can spend time at their home. That can sometimes be an eye-opener, seeing a different dimension to the person who might probably be very different to yourself. So, just Subhuti again. Each of us inhabits our own world, our own realm, and speaks from within that realm, and doesn't understand the language of the other person. So we just form affection rather than going beyond it and entering the other person's world and trying to understand it. And this is the real challenge that friendship presents us with. We are different from each other. We all have a very different inner structure, and we must make an effort of imagination to rise above that difference, to enter into each other's world and understand each other sympathetically, empathetically. Is Dhammasara still here? He left, okay. I don't know if you know that he's been part of a television thing. Yeah, maybe, I don't know if some of you might have seen it. He was asked, or we were asked if we would have a young person to join in a program where there were people from different religious backgrounds living together for a week. A bit like Big Brother, but in a very positive sense. So he was sort of like there. They didn't know each other, you know, they were just suddenly appearing in this quite beautiful place here in Berlin, meeting each other and getting to know each other and developing, really friendships with each other. It's really beautiful to see. It's like 6 episodes on ZDF called Against All Gods. Against All Gods, the spiritual, no, not spiritual community, does somebody know the subtitle? It doesn't matter. Against All Gods. I think they have now English subtitles there as well. So if you want to see Dhammasara representing Buddhism, just have a look at it. So, just the last point, it's a practice, what I said at the beginning, and not in a strategic way, in a cold sense, but you could see it like meditation. Friendship is a practice, and we've got a whole toolbox we can use. You learned the Metta Bhavana today. It's a fantastic way of bringing friendships to mind, even your enemies to mind, wishing other people well, stepping into their world, really seeing on a lower level that all of us just want to be happy and we don't want to suffer. You can rejoice in other people's merits, just really think about their qualities and just share that with them. That could be a gift if somebody does that to you. You can confess your faults, take responsibility for things you've done wrong. Yeah, really share that with your friend and never close a door on them. Yeah, leave it at least a little bit open. And don't forget to have fun. We don't have to be perfect, yeah. It's very interesting when we're coming together, all these conditionings of childhood will come up. Very interesting sometimes who comes into our lives. It's a bit like having my brother, my mum, my dad there again, and sort of like the stuff which is coming up then. But fantastic to learn about it. And remember, it will take time. You have to give it time. A flower will need time to grow and open up. You cannot open a lotus with a crowbar, with a Brecheisen. You will need patience. So, in this sense, Kalyana Mitrata is the whole of the spiritual life. Kalyana Mitrata is the beautiful, the noble friendship. Kalyana Mitrata will lead to the heart's release. So.